vehicle is due for service, the first thing we do is I build the task list for this vehicle. And so I'll come over here, I have my paperwork, and I go through the whole vehicle. So what I'm looking for, the first thing I do is I walk around the vehicle to see if I see any faults that are like just at my face. So I'll check the tires, look at the tread, make sure all the lug nuts are on the tires, make sure none of the lights are broken, nothing's bent, make sure this has the pin, check all the tires, make sure the exhaust is good. So like something like this, I would annotate that. The door frame's falling apart. Next, I'm going to look at the hubs. So I'm going to look at the inside of the tires down here and make sure it's not leaking on this back plate. Make sure the ball joints are good. Looking at the rear tires, make sure they're not leaking. I'm making sure there's no leaks at all on anything underneath the vehicle. So the oil pan, the transmission pan, the fuel tank, the diffs, the hubs. Make sure your half shafts are good. So your half shafts right here. Make sure nothing's missing, like bolt wise. Check the exhaust system. Check the transfer case. I don't see anything leaking, so we're gonna go back up top. The oils, all the fluids, stuff like that. So I'm checking the coolant. Coolant's good. Check the transmission fluid. So the transmission fluid's good. It has a nice red color. Make sure you check like your belts over here in the engine. Make sure they're tight. Make sure the cap's on for the engine oil. There it goes. You're looking at the radiator and all this stuff. Make sure it's not damaged. It's not like holes punched through it, stuff like that. This one looks brand new. Engine oil is good. It's nice and clear. The power steering. So you have this little bubble over here. Check the power steering, make sure that's good. And then here's your brake reservoir. Make sure it has brake fluid. It does. So here's your alternator. You're checking to make sure all your connections are good. Everything's good on your voltage regulator right here attached to the alternator. And then you're just looking at the whole entire engine. Make sure there's no leaks. Make sure all your wiring's good. All that stuff. And then what I do after that is I drop the hood. And then next is the lights. That all the lights work. So all the lights do work in the front. So what I'm checking in here is I'm making sure all the gauges work. So your fuel level, make sure this gauge works, your oil pressure, your speedometer, so you give a little bit of gas, make sure that works, your batteries, and your coolant. So after all that stuff works, the AC, make sure the AC works if it's an up armor. So everything works there. So my next thing is to check the batteries. So when you're checking your batteries, make sure all these cables on the terminals are tight. Make sure they're all the way pressed down. Make sure nothing's loose. See, that one's kind of loose. So what the mechanic will do, since I caught this, they'll come in and tighten it and make sure it's good. So when I do my after PMCS, everything will be tightened. And then that's, make sure you check the seat belts. All the seat belts have to work. So the seat belts work. Disengage. Check the other side real quick. Make sure this seatbelt works. So that seatbelt works. And you're always going to check this fire suppression system. Make sure it's good. Make sure it's pressurized and it's not like blown out. And that. check the windows, make sure the windows aren't foggy, make sure they're not damaged, and make sure you can see outside all the windows. And then that's really it. Alright, so what I did is I just did my initial inspection. So what I'm going to do, the status A is awaiting initial inspection. So I just completed that. So I'm going to put it in status B, which is in shop. After that, I'm going to go to operations. And then here is my task list. So as you can see, initial inspection, it took half an hour to do. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put in my personnel number and give myself those hours. So what's going to happen next is every single time the mechanic that's doing the job goes through each one of these, I'll put their personnel number along these right here so they get the hours for it. And then after I do that, I'll put it in process. There it goes. So then we'll just save it from there. And that's it. Then it's saved in B status, and once they complete